Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to a stat special for Stat Me Up. Fullbacks, ladies and gents, an important position, big consideration for the Reds this summer. Left back, well, that's a priority position, isn't it? Upgrades on Costas, upgrades on Robbo, maybe both go. You may see it different ways. At right back, we don't have a choice. Whatever your hopes are for him staying, forget it. We know what's happening. It's now about who comes in. Is Connor Bradley good enough to be number one? Those targets and all points are going to be discussed tonight. And as ever, I've got Bart to guide me through the fullback situation. And I know I'm throwing you a load of gum when I ask this question, Bart, but the fullback situation, people will always say, and we've talked about it before, a position that doesn't necessarily move the needle. It's not the sexiest position, but Liverpool have got to get these two right this summer. Fullbacks in our team are so important, aren't they, for what we use them for, how we use them as well. We've got to get these recruitment aspects spot on, haven't we?
100%. Probably last 10 years, I would say, the fullbacks have been for Liverpool really important. Very early clock days, it was high and wide, up and down, and then Trent developed. Even he still stayed wide. It's only recently that he's done a bit of the inverting stuff, and we've had a bit of a lopsided approach. But they're both absolutely key in the way we attack. Defensively as well, they have to be solid, but it's more for us to change the way we attack fundamentally would be a move away from using the fullbacks to do that. And to be fair, the modern systems are now centered around utilising your fullbacks either high and wide like we do, or like Pep does, which is put them into midfield and then he pushes on the midfielders to create an overload higher up. So a bit like Arteta used to do with his early Arsenal team. He doesn't really do that much now, but they're fundamental to the way a modern, I would say, elite side play. So we have to get them right. And as much as they might not move the dial, they do reduce the element of risk of conceding, which I think you can probably see, unfortunately, for one of the legends, I would say a legend of the current league, is declining. And now when he comes on, we do look a bit unstable. So you need to change that up with a more stable fullback to come in. And the right side, as you said, there's no hiding about it. We need to decide if what we've got is good enough or whether we go and recruit. So two key positions for maybe not move the needle, but would stop us from losing. Maybe look at it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. There's importance to both of these, no doubts at all. And when we start this, it's probably best we'll go left to right. So we'll talk about the left back position. And it's funny this, as I say it, Bart, because I keep seeing this. I know you'll have clocked it repeatedly. Everyone knows Andy Robbo, as you said, legend, 8 million bargain, all the rest. Absolutely brilliant in his pomp, world class. There's zero doubts about all of that. Clearly on the decline. Everyone's seen it this season. You know what? Even the biggest fans of Robbo know this. The conventional wisdom seems to be, and I keep seeing this, and I really don't agree with it, that Tsimikas goes this summer and Robbo stays to see out his final year and then goes on a free because you keep him around for his leadership and, his personality. And whilst I'm not saying there's, that's just a complete nonsense argument, I understand the principles behind that argument. We've got to look at it in the metrics. And every show I do with you is Stat Me Up, whenever we look at it, it always comes back to Robbo's on the pitch more, but when Costas he does better, tends to be the stat. So when we're basing it on this, it feels like it's not been a stellar season for either. That's important to say. But what do the stats say about these left backs for this season in just straightforward analysis?
I think that statement you made is largely been true. I would say since turn of year, if I'm being honest with you, I think Costas has been the better fullback since the turn of year. Whether you think that player is good enough to be a Premier League winning left back is a different question. But out of the two, I think Costas has been the better fullback for a period of time now. The problem Costas has got is he has to play to get in rhythm. So then he's not a come in and out type sub, which would be a perfect squad player. Just comes in, does his job, and goes home type thing. He's not that kind of player. So I mean, we haven't updated this is their weekend game, so apologies. But Robertson, because he's played more, has got more touches than Costas, right? He's got more penalty box touches, but as a percentage of games played, like, you know, so out of 1,131 touches from Costas, he's got 23 in the box, whereas, you know, Robbo's got over 1,200 more touches, but he's only at 59. So it's not the Costas is doing more with the touches he's got, pro rata, shots. Robbo's got 15 to that amount on the pitch, whereas Costas probably just under half has got 7 shots, right? That's not Costas' strong point. Dang it, he saw at the weekend. He had a pretty decent chance. I mean, he got a shot off, but, you know, anybody else, you probably would have backed into a better effort. And they're fairly similar in terms of that kind of output, should we say. XG, again, some of it is about opportunity, and Robertson until the weekend would have changed. Robert's at 1.5 XG for the season. That's how much he's actually had a shot, not what he's created. And Costas, because he's not normally on this stuff, has only got 0.3. Okay, EPV 0.6 for Costas and about 10 for Robbo. Again, look at pro rata. That's a little bit the other way, should we say? If we look at some actual player performance. So Robbo here has a dual success for the season of about 34, aerial about 30, which is some of the key things. And this is the key things. The percentage of team EPV is about 10, whereas Costas is about 6. So again, that pro rata in terms of the minutes played is important to know. Costas 52% dual rate, aerials 34 above Robbo. Pass success 89 versus 87, so Costas slightly in advantage, but nothing to write home about, should we say. In terms of the rest of that isn't. Let's have a look at EPV. What do we do in terms of defending at the mobile in there? But if you start looking at then some of your baseline stats in terms of, right, what does it look like in your public domain stuff, right? So this is right up to date for Costas, and you'll see here, this is his scouting report for up to the last year's worth of data, okay? And you'll see when we talk about defensive stuff on this show, the interceptions is what we want to see. That's the proactiveness. Blocks we want to be a little bit better. That's the stopping crosses in Costas is mind. Tackles is probably a little bit higher because we don't really want our fullbacks to be doing that, but if he has to do it, then fine. In between the boxes for Costas, you can see passes attempted 95th, good, green, 95th percentile. Completion 84 percentile, 84th percentile, good. Progressive passes 99th percentile for a fullback. That's really good. That's really good. But this is where the difference comes. He's not a carrier, right? Progressive carry is 27th percentile. Touches in the penalty box. He's not going to do that for you. He did it at the weekend because we had to. We were trying to get in there, but he's not that kind of guy, right? He's not going to receive it high. But when he is up there, assists 80th percentile for a fullback. That's good. Like, you know, that's all right. You know, that's better than 8 of every 10 players. He's better than, So expected assists, expected goals 96, shot creating actions 90th percentile. Right. So these are good stuff for Costas. If you start breaking it down a little bit more deeper, you've got your standard stats there. But his passing range here for Costas, as you'll see, is nearly all in the 90th, apart from long passes isn't really a strong point for him, right? Pass types, so we've got dead ball he's good at. From free kicks, we know he's on that a lot more when he's on the pitch. Through balls isn't really his game. Cross is 90th percentile in terms of accuracy for that. So there are some good things there. Goal creating action, again, a lot of green here, 90th for shot creating actions. Fouls drawn, so he draws a foul quite well. Drawing a defensive action, so 91st and 92nd percentile. So they're good actions to be having on that. Defensively, okay, tackles we've already said he's high. He also wins a high amount of tackles. He tackles in the middle third is high for him and the defensive third, okay? But he's not a high presser. So that's 52 percentile, yeah, breaking that down. And as I said, the errors on the ball is, so you want that to be low. So that's 88th percentile. So that's a good thing to have, right? Not a bad thing. Yeah. So that's about 0. Per game. So he doesn't do a lot of errors per 90. Tackles and interceptions high. Yeah. So these are some good metrics to be having as a fullback in a bit more detail. Aerials, just because we always look at that, he's not great. 27% is not a good stat to be able to look at. But we look at Robbo. So in the last year, right? Okay. So again, defensively, that's all red. There's no green there. Whereas Costa's had green at the top here. Yeah. In between, we know that he's a better carrier of the ball, 74th percentile, but he's still not a bad passer. He's just not in the 90th percentile pass completion. He's only in the 70th. When he's in and around the box, shot creating actions 94. So he still creates a lot of shot creating actions. He's less of a threat, even more so on the ball in terms of himself, though, taking a shot. And if we start breaking that down even more, well, look at shooting, passing. I would find it hard pressed to find a Liverpool player who wouldn't have a lot of green here, but we're in the 90th for a lot of these. Okay, pass completion long is worse than Costa's at 40th percentile. Expected assist pass type. Sorry, yeah. So we've got, excuse me, we've got passes attempting long balls, through balls he's better at. Okay, but there's some very similar traits between the two, right? Shot creating actions, though, he's not as high. He's definitely not gaining as many fouls, and he's not gaining as many defensive actions coming near him, which sometimes means the opposition don't see him as a threat, if you know what I mean. So defensively, whereas we saw with Costas, there was a lot of green on this chart, if you just remember that. So defensively here was Costas, yeah. If you look at Robbo, it's a lot of red. Yeah, so tackles, he's dropped down to 16th percentile tackles, 19th percentile. Yeah, tackles in the defensive third, which means he's having to do as 29th percentile, attacking third, low down. Errors, he's in the 42nd percentile for errors per 90. Yeah, so that's creeping up. Yeah, you want that to be where Costas is, right down the bottom. Possession. Again, green. You wouldn't expect this to drop too much because he's a quality footballer. Aerials 1, he's in 18th percentile, 37%, which is slightly better for Costas. So if you overlay the two as if we were buying a player, you'll see here Costas largely covers Robbo's wagon wheel. The only thing that Robbo is still slightly better at is non-penalty XG and non-penalty goals. I think it's largely because Robbo's actually scored, or he's had more XG, and progressive carries. But we know that is Robertson's game, carrying the ball. Everything else, Costas is performing above Robbo's metrics. And if you look at the more detailed reports as you go down, particularly on the defensive side, you can see the stark contrast between the two players. Yeah, there is a lot of green here to like. Maybe not so much on the blocks and that for Costas that you would appreciate, but everything else, you've got some 90th percentiles, you've got some 80s and 70s, whereas Robbo, no, there's only one of them above 50 percentile, which is dribbles challenged, which is where he's challenging someone, yeah. But he's in the 42nd percentile for actually 47, sorry, for actually winning that challenge, yeah. So in terms of the two, I think you can see there is now a distinct difference off the ball, definitely, and Costas at the moment offers us some more security in possession on it in terms of his passing in certain areas. And I also think he blends in with Bradley, Bradley's very much a carrier, whereas Costas is a passer. So that balance is slightly better having Costas and Bradley on the pitch. But yeah, I think looking at this a year ago, I don't think there would have been such a stark difference. But breaking it down into more detail, you can really see the granularity of where Costas is now outperforming Robertson on a per 90 basis.
I mean, some of those stats, Bart, they're But they're quite stark just when I'm looking at it, even then, and just sort of assimilating all that. Is it fair to say that in summary, and we kind of, if we just park the emotional side of the leadership or the intangibles a little bit to the side just now, is it a fair summary to say Tsimikas outstrips Robbo defensively, as in it's all green for Costas, 99% or 97th percentile for interceptions, Robbo red across the board? That's a factor to consider. The other factors to consider are, number one is different styles and pro rata, as in Costas is a passer, as you said, Robbo is a carrier.
Yeah.
So you bring that into the mix a little bit as to what you're looking for. But the other thing that really struck me is errors. And we should talk about this for Robbo because, as we said, and we can see, I know the chat panel's going crazy. I get all that. But in terms of errors, you think of the red card against Fulham, the own goal the other weekend, the penalty against Southampton where he shouldn't have let Diblin get all the way and then just waited till he was in the box, the Real Madrid penalty. And even people say, like the own goal, the Real Madrid penalty, unlucky. I can get that. But you've talked about a phrase, the scene of the crime, or not being at the scene of the crime. You know, if you're not good, be lucky. That's the other option in that regard. Don't be, don't have a bad game and be unlucky. It doesn't really translate to what you want there. So with all that in mind, if you take the intangibles about who's the most popular character, who's a member of the leadership group, who is like, and that's not to be derogatory about Robbo at all. He's been a brilliant servant, but just in terms of the tangibles we put on the table when we're looking at this, and maybe XT comes into it, I don't know, but are all the metrics not suggesting Costas is better to keep?
Yeah, I think Costas is younger. The only one I forgot to bring up there, which I just brought up now, it is the XT. So for the first time in a while, Costas has now overtaken Robbo in terms of XT per 90, right? So you've got Costas is now at 0.19 versus Robbo at 0.18. Now you might think, it's only 0.1. That means he's producing the same XT as Mo, right? And Robbo is on the decline. Robbo used to be really high, like well up there with Trent. Trent's on 0.3, by the way. But so that's a significant moment that Costas has moved ahead. And I have said to you and sat me up, Costas is outperforming Robbo in XT pretty much every time he's on the pitch. His percentage of XT for the team has been growing. Yeah, I think the last three performances he's either been top or second in terms of threat production for the team. And that's a really important thing to remember. That didn't used to be the case. You could say all the other things, right? Yeah, Costas does this, Costas does that, but Robbo would still find a way to contribute to the team. And that just isn't the point now. And I personally, taking away all the intangibles, I think Costas is the better player to keep. But and I actually think there's a market for Robbo as well. I know it might sound nuts, but he's an English left back, well respected. You could see him going to a mid Premier League club, whereas I don't think there's a lot of resale for Costas, to be honest with you, unless you send him on. I don't think you're not going to get big money. So I just think for me it's a pretty easy decision, but it's not me, and they will take into account other things as well. So for me, it would be Costas to keep, but
yeah, we'll see the decision we make. And I agree with 99% of that, bar correcting Bart's on the fact that Robbo is Scottish before the rest of Scotland does try and attack me for calling him English that way as well.
Sorry,
no, it is hard to argue with those stats. And left back, someone's coming in. I mean, one of them's going. You could argue that maybe both could even go. Who knows what will happen? One of them is definitely going because a new left back is coming in. Now, the names, Milos Kerkez, every 5 minutes seems to be mentioned by someone, doesn't he? A respectable journo. There's zero doubt, as Lewis Steele called him yesterday, the top target. So he's the one potentially coming in. Very much strikes me as, in terms of those two, a carrier, which then makes you wonder, is he not a replacement for Robbo a bit more? But to debate that differently.
Yeah.
The other one that has been mentioned, and it can almost feel now like a manifestation signing, but we've looked at him. We know he's been linked, and just in case people have missed this point, I still think this player is the one to go for personally, even though it looks like it might not happen now. So Milos Kerkez is the obvious name, but also on the screen there, Alvaro Carreras, who has been linked with us. And the metrics on this kid, Bart, I think it's important we just lay out almost these two against each other and what they could bring as a left back.
Yeah, I think we even said on a TMM a while ago that Alvaro Carreras I thought could be a really smart buy. It won't cost you a lot of money, but he's got good pedigree. He's played in a youth setup for United, so there might be a chance he's homegrown. All those things, I'm thinking, this could be a really smart buy. If you look at his standard stats, I mean, there is a lot to like there. Interception, 99th percentile. Blocks, as I said, the thing that Costas wasn't doing well, he's at 84th. Tackles low, great. Don't need to tackle because you're doing the other stuff really well, yeah? And look at him here. He passes the ball progressively, takes players on. He receives it high as well. He's not a carrier, yeah? But pass completion, 66. That's a little bit low, let's be honest and be fair. And his passes attempted is 79th percentile. But in terms of shot creating actions, 83rd. They're in the 70s here for assists and expected goals. He's not going to score you a lot of goals, clearly. 17th percentile is worse than Robbo. But that's his standard stats. But if you start looking a bit deeper, as we would do, so shooting, all right, we can establish this kid is not going to be smashing the net on like Trent did at the weekend, right? He ain't going to be doing that, all right? But look at his passing here. Look at it. Yeah. It's all green, all in the 80s, some 90s in there. To some key passes, 78th percentile. Yeah, passes into the penalty area, 88th percentile. Progressive passes, 87. If we look at his attempts, he does switches better than the others at 98th percentile. Through balls, 93rd percentile for a fullback. This is some really good stuff. Shot creating actions. Doesn't draw much. Okay, fair enough. It's similar to Robbo, but he does 83rd. If you look at defensively, okay, so he's tackling in the middle third. Okay, that's fine. I don't mind that. Blocks and shots blocked and passes blocked. So he's blocking a lot of shots and he's still blocking a lot of passes. And the interceptions is 99th percentile, as we said. Possession, looking at what he's doing, he's got carries. He's still quite high. Even though he's not known to be a carrier, right? They're not progressively, but he's still carrying the ball, 94th percentile. And miscellaneous, just to top it off for you, he's 44th percentile for aerials. I mean, I know that's not like headline stuff, but it's still better than the other two, right? That's 46th percentile. So I think that's a very tidy fullback, and he is 22, right? Now, if you flip that, we've got to be fair. We look at Kerkez, all right? This is the kid that's been linked with us. He's 21, so he's a little bit older. I've got that right, haven't I? No, he's a little bit younger. Same school year, shall we say? Let's be kind. I think it's not a bad profile. It's just a bit mixed, right? There's some parts here and there, all right? If we then break it down as we did, so the key thing that people love about Kerkez is up here, but actually 64th percentile for shot creating actions. Is that better than our kid from Portugal? No. So he carries the ball more. Yes, he does, and progressively at 86th percentile. Carreras doesn't do that. We've already established. But let's have a look at the passing, shall we? So pass completion for Kerkez, really low percentile there. 26th percentile for completion and attempted for 28. Yeah. So I'm happy to take a either or, but your or's got to be really high if your other alternative passing the ball is that low, and it's not. It's only in the 80 percentiles. Okay. Defensively, tackles fine. We already said that. Interceptions progressive. Okay, fine. But he does do a little clearances. Some of this would be down to Bournemouth's play. We get that. Okay, if we start looking shooting, he's not anything high here. He takes 76% percentile for his goals and his shots. Okay, goals 86% percentile for XG and non-penalty XG 87. So Okay, so he's a slightly better shooter than Carreras. Passing, this is not his strong game. All right. His best one here is crosses into the penalty area, and assists at 76. Everything else is not in the same area, should we say, as the man here. All right. Kerkez as well, goal shot creating actions. To be fair to him, he gets fouled a bit by defensive action. Yeah. It gets defensive action in 94 to create something up there. 66% of creating actions, which if we look down here, 73rd for Carreras. So he's still not as high as our man from Portugal. Defensively, I think we could probably, Carreras is very strong on the bottom elements here, on 19 up on some of the key skills that we'd be looking at. Whereas Milos is good in terms of challenges. One, not lost, if you like, but there's a lot of red there. Tackles, doesn't make a lot of tackles fine, and when he does, he loses them as well. And these are all low in terms of where he's taking them on. When he's challenging someone, he's not challenging a dribbler very often, and that would be a slight worry, because if Bournemouth, you would get players attacking you, right? They're not a top side. So therefore, they are going to get players coming at you, and he's not engaging with them, should we say. Challenge is lost is a good thing, but that might be because he's not actually taking the challenge on that much. Possession-wise, as we said, progressive carries, good, okay. Carries into final third, 85th percentile. Just checking how it is with here. So total carries into final third here is 85th and 73rd. Yeah. Well, Carreras is 86. So he is slightly better on the carry, which is what you'd expect, all right?
True.
Kerkez is not as good in the air. He's 13th percentile, 35. So if you overlay the two, as we would do with targets, our man for Portugal largely outperforms Kerkez by a whole ring on the wagon wheel, which is a bigger difference than the difference between Costas and Robbo. The only elements which are different are the same as between Costas and Robbo, i.e. Robbo has more progressive carries, non-penalty goals and clearances and dribbles, which is exactly what Kerkez has versus Carreras. Carreras is a very similar profile to Costas. So he's a different fullback, but largely I would say 2/3 of the metrics that you would compare the two, Carreras outperforms Kerkez.
I can see the chat panel, and people will get this out. Yes, I understand it's Portugal and one's in the Premier League, so that comes into the mix. Absolutely, that plays a part. Just in terms of what's interesting when you showed the key parts of their profile, and you can tell me if I'm reading this wrong, is it fair to say that in terms of who's the closest to each, Kerkez is the road runner, as in the speed, and he would be a natural more closer to Robbo replacement, as in go up and down pace, all those elements. Carreras, he isn't bad at carrying it, but it's his all-round game and his passing again that's the strength, i.e. similar to Tsimikas. So you'd almost think if you were getting rid of Tsimikas, you bring in Carreras, and if you were getting rid of Robbo, you would bring in Kerkez if you were trying to get the closest alternate. Is that a fair assessment?
100%. And that also gives you some insight in terms of what you're going to do at right back. Yeah. So if you're going to play Bradley, then you probably want your starting left back to be Carreras, not Kerkez, because then the balance is what it is currently and what it has been for probably 3-4 years. Now, Slot might decide to go completely away from that. Fine, fair enough. Makes us a bit predictable, but fair enough. You might have other ways to manipulate how we build. But if you want the current setup to be repeated next season, then Bradley is your carrier. Then you would need to buy a fullback like Carreras and not Kerkez.
Which, in simple terms, from everything we know, everything we're seeing, we're hearing, it looks like Kerkez is coming in, doesn't it? That seems pretty much the solid bet right now, which then means, ladies and gents, If it is Robbo, maybe it's one type of fullback that he's looking for. Who knows? Even though it seems against what we've been trying to do this summer and Robbo is declining, but we will see what develops. So there we go, ladies and gents. A million things to ponder on this one. Moving across the pitch, Bart, this right back situation. Now, this is fascinating. I talked to you earlier at the start of the show about modern speculation, how people see it. This is this. It alarms me when I see this. A lot of people have said now, and maybe it's because of the nature of how Trent's going to go, so that feeds into it. But you'll have seen this, the element of Trent's going, sod him, Bradley's going to be number one, we won't miss Trent. That type of thing scares the sheer bejesus out of me as a statement, because this isn't to be derogatory in any way about Conor Bradley. I like the player. I like what he brings. I like the way he plays for the shirt. I do think he can be a really valuable squad member. But the first thing, just to avoid any semblance of doubt, and I think it's important this is spelled out in the metrics, Trent Alexander-Arnold going is bad news for Liverpool, isn't it, in terms of the metrics and the stats?
It is. I mean, Connor's played a lot of games for us this season, not as much as Trent, all right? And again, this as I said, the same dashboard, I haven't quite updated this last the weekend. But I think even if you went pro rata, to try and be fair, Connor's a different fullback. He's got 37 penalty box touches versus Trent's 49. So that shows you the difference in the style, right? So Connor is going to drive you into the box. Trent just isn't doing that anymore. Trent will look to get in the 10 midfield, and if he goes high and wide, he goes high and wide. Doesn't go in the box. All right, so that's a difference in style. But I mean, like Trent's got 50 shots. Connor's got 9. There's an instance at the weekend where Connor should have laced it into the bottom corner. He didn't get past it. Yeah, so there's things like that. But the key thing, taking out all, there's various things in terms of style, but the big thing that people will talk about and people will get bored and whatever, and those who don't want to know about it, but Trent has an EPV of 10.54 for the season, right? Bradley has 1.4. And if you go to our old favourite of Mr. Mark R, Trent is not only the top player for Liverpool, he's also the top player in the goddamn league, right? At 0.3 from fullback, Bradley is 0.1. That's the same as Canate. Now I've got this filtered for Liverpool, right? But if you took that filter off, Trent is above De Bruyne, above your Maddison, above your Salvino, above Fernandes, all United fans out there. So, and that's our right back, whereas Connor would be way down on page 3. He's not even on page 3. He's on page. He's below Virgil. I mean, I'm not trying to have a go at the kid, but he's quite far down in terms of your production, right? Yes, he does other things, but it's just the fact, that he is not that creative as a fullback at the moment. Looking at his profile, there is a lot to like about this kid. As you said, I do generally like the kid, right? I don't like the way he spent quite a lot of time injured, but some of that is he might have got overplayed as a youngster and he's fed in the fields a bit. You have to learn how to do the minutes and the rest of it. But defensively, loves a tackle. And that is an old school cliche, but you and I are both old enough to know that's one of the things we love a fullback to do. For us personally, we've looked at it. We prefer these two metrics, your blocks and interceptions, to be higher, right? Aerials, though, as we keep banging on about it, Connor's actually pretty decent at them. Right? 81st percentile for aerials. In between the boxes, having lambasted his passing that isn't his strong point, it isn't, right? Progressive passes is not necessarily a strong point, 56. Progressive would give you the XT and the rest of it, and that shows you where he isn't. But he carries it progressively. So he moves the ball 20% closer to goal, 3.4 times a game. So that's 97th percentile. That's very good, right? He's just below 80 in terms of passing, 80% about 83%. And the attempts are good enough at that amount of passes. In the opposition box, XG gets into good positions, doesn't score. Assists 88th percentile. Okay, great. This is the bit he's not doing at the moment, which is he's not turning the opportunity to have threat into a goal creating action, which would give him the XT and the XG, and he's not doing that. All right, he's at 59th percentile for that, which is probably one of the lowest of all of our fullbacks, right? So that's just something to look at. But again, looking at all of his metrics, shooting, he's not a weakness of his. He just doesn't do it enough, right? He just doesn't have, shots on target 75th, shots on target for a fullback 93rd. But it's not. There's not high volume passing. He's good at it. There's nothing wrong with saying he's good at passing. It just doesn't give you. It's not long. It doesn't give you the progressiveness. All those elements that give you the stuff that Trent does. He doesn't do. But that again, this is like comparing. This is comparing Konza to Van Dijk in some respects. Yeah,
unfair in a way. Yeah,
it's quite unfair because Van Dijk's the best centre half in the world, and Konza is just scrabbling around trying to be Liverpool's fourth choice. So it's a little bit like that. Shot creating actions. There is some green on here. Don't get me wrong. He takes players on. We know that 90th percentile. He does draw a foul. Great. And he's 77 for goal creating. So he does have an impact. He's just not sustained at a high level in the 80th or 90th percentiles. Defensively, a lot of green. We're not going to lie about that. He takes dribblers on. He 35th percentile in terms of dribblers tackles. So it's not high, but he takes them on. Does lose a bit though, so he's in the 10th percentile. Errors. This is a good thing. Again, a bit like Costas, the errors per game is rounded up at 0, which is 88th percentile. Right, so that's a good thing. He doesn't have any on-ball errors that are leading to stuff that Robbo does. Right, he's not at the scene of the crime. He's fairly safe in possession. The thing we haven't got here, which Fantasy Football Scout does, for those who've got access, will show you that his drop-off when pressed is considerable. It's the worst in the team. So when you press Connor, his passing accuracy drops off, I think, something like 14 percentage points, whereas Trent is down by 5. So you saw that the weekend with Leicester. There's a couple of instances it was played out to from his fullback or his goalkeeper. And as soon as the Leicester player pressed him, he tried to ball down the line, which was mishit, and Mo couldn't win it, and then they countered us, right? There was 2 or 3 times like that. So that is something he can work on. It's not, nothing to take away from him. But Ariel's at 60th percentile. So there's a lot to like about Connor. It's just comparing him to like the Carreras. I know he's left back, but it's just there is some areas he still needs to develop, right? Now, I will bring up Trent because Trent's Trent, right? Trent gives us exactly what you want. Tackles, interceptions, bang in the green. Yeah, he's been doing this system for years, so he knows what to do. He's not going to carry the ball, we know that, but progressively passing it, that's nearly 8.5 passes a game at a progressive 99th percentile. Passes attempted 97th percentile. Yes, the completion is low, but we know that that's because he takes the risk.
Yeah,
he loves the knuckleball into midfield and does that. But look at those attacking metrics, like 90th, 97th, 99th for shots. They're all shot created actions, 98th percentile. There's nearly 4 a game that he produces a action that creates a shot. That is outstanding, and that is what we're going to be missing. Aerials, got to call it out, not his strong point. He's in the first percentile for that. Probably the worst out of all the fullbacks we've looked at tonight. Look at him a bit more detailed. Shooting, he's got some green up there in terms of shots. Takes a good amount of shots. In terms of passing, we know this is going to be his strength. Key passing 95th, expected assist 95th, passes into penalty area 99th, passes into the final third 99th, progressive passes 99th. This is the stuff that we are going to miss when people talk about, we're okay, we've got Connor. Connor doesn't give you this. And not many fullbacks do, but we don't have anybody else in the team that does this either, right? Pass types, dead ball, through balls, 99, switches, 99, crosses, 91st. Yeah, I could go on, but there's just so many elements here where he's in the 90th percentile. Yeah, defensively, he's not as bad as people make out, not at all. He's quite happy to take dribblers on, attack them at 95th percentile. He makes good challenges. Doesn't lose a lot, so there's some, and he's happy to take challenges defensively and high in the 70th. So there are things here that are very good. His interceptions, we said, are high. On the ball, very good. Touches, where's he taking them? He's taking them a good proportion all over all the thirds, really. So it's not a lot of our play goes through Trent, so that's why he's 98th percentile. Carries, although it's not a strength of his, he's still 97th percentile for actually taking a carry on. Might not be progressive, but he's still good. Miscellaneous, we've already said it. He loses. Sorry, he loses a lot of aerials, but you could let him have a few things. But if you do the whack up well, Trent's blue, so he outperforms in all the attacking. Connor does do better on some of the other elements because he doesn't take any risks with his passing. He carries the ball more, takes more players on, and he receives the ball in terms of progressive because he's higher up pitch, right? So there's some elements. That's why Connor has a slightly better profile on those, or better profile than Trent on those elements because of the way he plays differently to Trent. But other than that, Trent monsters him on the attacking metric. So, just to re-emphasize that the XT that Trent produces is the best in the league. So progressive passes is one of the best. Is the best in the league. It's just, it is what it is. Unfortunately, he is going to be a huge, huge loss to our team. But he's made his call, and sometimes you've got to wish him all the best.
I don't know about that last line, but I was with you up to there, and that will not be a popular line, I know, for the chat panel either. And I suppose, in essence, because we're talking about Bradley being number one, that was the focus. It seems like that is what the club has decided, unless there's some big surprise coming our way. And just analysing more Bradley, because like you said, it almost feels like too harsh to line him up to Trent, but it's been clearly spelled out when Trent leaves. We lose a lot. We lose the biggest threat in the league. Just to be clear, people, as the stats show, don't get it twisted about what is walking out the exit door. But in terms of Bradley, there is a lot to like. As we said, carries outstanding. Even touches getting forward that way. Keeps his passing quite simple. So does that, decent pass. There's a lot to like about this kid. Are the two things, if I picked it up right, that... And one's injuries and being fit, because we don't know he can do 3,000 minutes, as we talk about. That's a big ask for the league. So that's the big one. But it's the second one, just in terms of replacing Trent as best as he can, a different player, a carrier. But the actual numbers, as in, like you said, as in getting shots off, actually getting more assists that way. Is that what you think really needs to go up from Bradley? Or is there something else you think that needs to take his game to the next level?
No, I think that's exactly it. It's output. He across the series in the 6th percentile. So even when he's getting into areas to deliver, like Costas passes the ball where he's not a carrier, but he still crosses the ball. We saw when his profile is really high when he's crossing. So however we get into position, we need our fullbacks to cross the football because Mo, let's extend Cody, are not really going to do that. They do a little bender in, they do a little drifted ball, sort of pass. It's not a cross. So we need our fullbacks to do that. And also, for all of Bradley's good work, and he is good at carrying the ball, and he gets into good positions, it's just that bit on the end that he needs to play a ball in behind or, play it earlier to Mo. Those kind of link-ups, play a wall pass with Mo, play a wall pass with Tom. That's the element to this game that he isn't quite there at the moment. That could also be because he's not run the patterns enough. He's not been involved in the team on a regular basis to get used to the patterns of play. So that you saw it the weekend as well. He was slightly out of sync on a few things. He was slightly behind or two in front. And that will only come with playing, right? So you could be sat here in it, I know, hopefully not Christmas, but Christmas time, we could be going, no, you know what? Now he's learnt the patterns, he's absolutely fine, but he has still got to learn those patterns. And while he's still doing that, it might not be there. It might also not be natural for him to get as wide as we need a fullback to do, but we shall see. I think the balance you've got to find between the two fullbacks will be really interesting for Slot to decide upon. And the other thing that Bradley's got to do is he's got to stay fit. Got to stay fit.
Which, yeah, ultimately maybe the big question for the next bit. In terms of, well, a right back's fully coming in. We know that's going to happen, whatever that may be. There's a lot of names with this, Bart. I mean, one player, I'm just going to say it, but I refuse to countenance more analysis on this. Jeremy Frimpong, just right wing back for Leverkusen.
Yeah.
The lad is brilliant going forward. He does not defend. Yes, it's not his role in his system, but all his metrics. It's such a different system, such a different way to the way he plays. And also, the thought of Frimpong on the right and Kerkez on the left just terrifies me, because that would mean one of Gravenberch, McAllister or Szoboszlai is dead by Christmas 2025, essentially, just because of what they're going to be asked to do. So we're taking that out the mix a little bit. The two names that are similar-ish profiles that have come up and been ones we've looked at for TMM is Javier Reid, the young Feyenoord right back, very limited experience. And for all you all say it in the chat panel, sample size, we're going to say that straight away. Just get that out of your system, of course. But a Liverpool fan, Slot knows him, all those types of things. The second one, which I think a lot of people have looked at and referenced, not pronouncing it wrong, Martin Fernandez from Porto. So again, sample size, but interesting profiles. Quick, both have shone in different places. I'm going to say sample size again, just so you can get it out your midst in the chat panel. But in terms of what we can see for these kids and potentially coming in, it is good to run the metrics on both of these in terms of Martin Fernandez, Javier Reid. What do they say?
So it has to be said, there is not a lot of data on Javier Reid. All right. He plays in the Eredivisie, so they don't do a lot of stats there. And they do stats, but they're not publicly available. Okay. So you're running on some really low amount of data. But when you and I looked at this kid a while ago, didn't we? And we were like, okay, there's some bits here, but because it's on such a low amount of minutes, it's really hard to draw conclusions on it. He loves to tackle, okay, great, but the rest of them aren't hot. You know, they're red, basically. I mean, we'd be calling that aerial 4 percentile, but he's not great. Pass completion 83rd, but it's still in the 50th. Take on 77, and he's not great going. I mean, not great an understatement. He's red on going forward, right? So it's not. And you scroll down, this is his complete report, right? It's not. I mean, here defensively, okay, fair enough. The tackle was one, which was a strong point. So fair enough. The guy can tackle. Okay, cool. But in terms of possession, nothing really standing out. Tackles you're take on it, not something you want to be worried about. I mean, when yellow cards is a standout green, that's a bit of a worry, if I'm being honest with you. So because there's not a lot of data on him, it's really difficult to draw any major conclusions on him. I would. So I'd be a bit concerned about him. To be honest with you, if you compared him, it's just because he's played not a lot of minutes. It's just really hard. I mean, comparing him to Connor outperforms him, right? And there's not any distinctive things that you'd say, okay, fair enough, he's better than Connor at X, because he isn't, apart from taking players on, but wouldn't be a trait I'd be signing a fullback up for. So there's some elements there where I'd be a bit concerned if they might see potential. Okay, fair enough. But as I said, the availability of stats is not great. Per 90, 0.35 for assists, shooting, haven't got anything. Shots on target, 33% shooting on target. playing time. He has an impact on the team, which is 0.32, which is good. But the rest of them, there just isn't. There's not enough to draw a reasonable conclusion from. So yeah, I'd be a fool if I was saying now telling you to go and sign him, because I can't. I just haven't got the data to say that. It looks like he could tackle, but there's not a lot else to go from.
Would just shout out there, it says on the screen, is I know it's Eredivisie and you're going to shout Eredivisie attacks. 6 assists in those minutes seems pretty decent. Or is it just because it's Eredivisie and that prorated is like 1?
Yeah, prorated that is pretty low, to be honest with you. You got to remember, his expected assist is 0.1. Yeah, right. So that's pretty low. Yeah, if you time to multiply that by, I think it's 0.75, you're looking at a really low amount for expected assist. So yeah, I would always caveat. I mean, Cody, when he came over, had a huge amount of assists before he came over for Liverpool, and he's playing okay now, but it's taken him a while to start getting the numbers right. So yeah, they would clearly have other data on him for it even to be considered, but for what we're looking at, I can't personally see that. I mean, one of the other lads you mentioned there was Martin, is that right?
Analysed, yeah.
Analysed, right. So again, limited data on him because he's Portugal, right? So if we look at his scouting report, which is slightly more games, but not a lot, Europa League based. It's a lower quality. He does outperform Reed, but it's a low sample size. He does have more shot creating actions. There's some more green on him. Fine, fair enough. But it's a low volume here. I mean, we're talking about 312 minutes. This is not something to be making huge assumptions on. If you look at his whole profile, this is passing, so he's got slightly more about him. He has some long passing. Okay, good. Expected assists, 87. That's good. Passing interference area, 94 percentile. Some things to be liking. Through balls, 99 percentile. So there's some things here that you start gleaming on. You just got a caveat with this: not a lot of minutes played to form this report. Defensively, is okay against dribblers. Makes tackles in the defensive third. Okay, so he's not really a high presser in where he's been asked to press. Possession based, doesn't take players on, attempts a lot, but he's not successful. He's 22nd percentile. And miscellaneous, he's 44% aerials, is 32nd percentile. So he's not bad on that. He's better than Trent, to be fair. But yeah, it's some things to go through. If you look at it just at a similar kind of thing, because there's not a lot to go on. So here he has a 0.54 impact on Porto, sorry. So that's pretty effective, even if it is the Premier League in Portugal. But as I said, extremely limited stats, and they must have something else to go on if they were even considering him. He's 19. He's got 5 assists again as well. But if you look at the expected, he's at 0.7. And Portugal translates to the Premier League at a better rate than Eredivisie. So I think it's by about 10%. So yeah, there are things to like about both of them. Well, more for Martin, to be fair with you, but the sample size is so small in the public domain. It's really hard for me to say, go and sign. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to do that. But maybe the data they have is that good. They're prepared to make a gamble on him at 19. If it's low value, maybe it's worth it. I don't know. If they see Bradley as being the first stop, the first choice. Martin did have some passing metrics on there, which would suggest maybe he's more of a passer than a carrier. But as I said, really small sample size to make any massive judgments on.
Is there? I mean, it does feel like it's one of these two, exactly as you said, and the metrics are showing this. They're coming in to be number 2, maybe see if they can challenge, long term to replace it. But it's trying not to be cruel. Again, the sample data is just so low for both. It's not that Reed is bad, but there wasn't too much data that really shone there. It did feel like when there was links, this is more about him be a Feyenoord player, that Liverpool fan and all those, and did okay against Rafa Leao, as we said when we looked at him. The one thing that I do just want to be fair and clear on is, because we looked at Fernandes and we did clearly prefer him to Reed. The passing played a part, didn't it? That, you know, in terms of the pass completion, long being in the 97th percentile, you had it, you know, passes into the penalty area, 94th percentile, through balls, 99th. There was, as you said, in the specific passing stats, and it's not a bad carrier. It's not just bad, good, but he's almost there. But especially when he can get the ball in both areas, short and long, there are passing stats that are really interesting there for Fernandes. Do you think that's why they're watching him? They have him on the list that way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've just overlaid the really small sample size with Connor, and there are elements he outperforms Connor, which is on the ball passing, right? So there are some things there. Well, sorry, in terms of progressive passes received and tackling, and he's up there in terms of progressive passes made. So I can definitely see some elements that even in this small sample size, he could be doing something, and they will have more extreme data on him. I mean, even here, his shot created actions and his expected assisted goals is higher than Connor, right? Sample size really small. Portugal, yes, but just looking at that, there could be something in Martin Fernandes, definitely. Could be.
Interesting. There we go, ladies and gents. And if we're presenting Martin Fernandes, it's definitely as it's not just one or the other, but more a passer than a runner, a different profile to Connor. It's important to say. But I mean, in terms of those, we're starting to look, because we have to talk about this in terms of both fullbacks. One's coming in on each side. I don't think there's any doubt about that, Bart. Is it about combinations for you that, for instance, if it's Kerkez, who is a carrier, you probably do want more of a passer, maybe like a Fernandes on the other side, if that's going to be the option. That if it's Kerkez and it was Frimpong, that would terrify you in terms of what they do. At the same time, if it's Reed, Carreras, if you're going to start Bradley, maybe that's the best analogy. Does it not seem better to have Carreras, who's more of a passer then? Can carry a bit, but more of a passer and good on. Is it not about balance both sides, rather than, if you are saying Kerkez and Frimpong, Gravenberch and Mack will be dead by Christmas?
Yeah, I think there's two things there. If you want to carry on with the same system we have now this season, which is our balanced fullback approach, both the fullbacks don't do the same thing. I mean, and in games where they've done the same thing, we've been ineffective. Okay, so if you want to carry on with that, then I would suggest it's Carreras if Bradley's going to be your first choice, or Fernandes comes in if Kerkez is going to, those kind of balancing around. If, however, he wants to change the way that we attack, then all the best. But I think you need to sign. You need to have a better 6-6 pivot, not a 6 and an 8. You probably almost want to play with 2 6s, and one that's very good at transverse play, coming across or working horizontally to block out passing lanes and support and drop in, and then the other one is that it can do a bit. So I think that's. So if we sign those 2 fullbacks that scare the hell out of you, and probably a little bit of me as well, I would then like to see midfield links that our players can come and play in a double pivot. If we don't see that, then we're going to have a very different way of building and defending. And we're also going to be asking a lot of our fullbacks. So if you're happy for them to do that, you're also going to be asking them to come back as well very quickly. And that's not to say that Klopp didn't do that in the early years. Robbo and Trent were like up and down, up and down, up and down. But that's a different proposition. So I think if he's going to carry on with a similar what we've got now, I would suggest he's going to buy one of each type. If he's going to change the way we attack and defend in wide areas, then I think he could buy two of the same. But that could be some exciting play, but it would be a very different makeup in midfield as well.
Yeah, the line between exciting and suicidal is probably quite small in football terms, shall we say. So we'll see what develops. But there you go, ladies and gents. We've laid it all out for you in terms of Costas versus Robbo. Who's doing best? Who will be better to keep this season as the metrics show it? We've looked at who's coming in with, will Carreras be better over Kerkez? You will have your opinions. You will make your judgments. We've laid it out fully for there. We've looked at right back. We can't underestimate what we're losing with Trent. You shouldn't undersell that, whatever you think about the move whatsoever, which you're entitled to your opinion. Conor Bradley, again, not to be derogatory, but the jump for him to be a number one with where he is now seems very distinct. Reid or Fernandez, both seem inexperienced there if they are to come in and be the number two right back, if you want to call it that, backing up Conor. But maybe that's the ploy, because a world where Kerkez and Frimpong are on the fullbacks, well, good luck being a midfielder at Liverpool. We will have to see what happens. All it leaves me to say, though, is for the full analysis, the full breakdown, running all the metrics and the analysis we asked for, Bart, it is much appreciated.
No worries, anytime.
And ladies and gents, that was another Stat Me Up special.